You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In today's episode, we're going to talk about some of the updates that you have not heard about the last couple months while we've been busy dealing with ICE, liquor bills, and even landfill issues. So in the studio with me now is Ms. Trish Melvin from Fruitland. Thank you. Mr. Jim Atkins from Mardella.
Morning.
So the three of us have been at just about every council meeting, or at least one of the three of us have been at every single one the last several months. And there's been a lot of crises that have come up in the last 6 or 7 months, maybe even 18 months. Lately, we've been dealing with ICE and liquor bills, and that's not what this episode is necessarily about. But why we've been talking about those things, we haven't been talking about the last couple of crises, right?
Indeed.
So we saw out in the council meetings the last few months, hours long of public comments centered around 287G. We do know now that that's going to be put on the back burner. We'll talk about that in another episode. However, I want to bring in Mike Goldberg because Mike has stayed right on top of the construction of Cell 7, or the lack thereof. And Jim, I know you've stayed on top of the dredging of the Wycomico River, or the lack thereof.
Yeah, lack of, yeah.
And Trish, if you would, I'd like for you to come back in because you have been there specifically for lots of reasons, but also mainly for the 287G. So I want to get your perspective on what you haven't heard about. So
Very good.
all right. So stay with us. When we come back, we're going to bring in Mike Goldberg. We're going to talk about the construction of Cell 7. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. In the studio with us now is Mike Goldberg from Del Mar.
Hey.
Jim Atkins from Mardella.
Yes, sir.
So, gentlemen, we talked several shows about the updates that we were expecting to have at this meeting. And some of the policies have come up with updates, such as ICE and liquor bills. But we're still waiting on some answers from some of the other crises that the county's had. And really, what I want to talk in this segment about the updates that we're still waiting on. And we didn't make up these crises. This is stuff that's been brought to us by elected officials. One example is the construction of Cell 7, the dredging of the Wycomico River, the funding of Fruitland Primary, and the health department's move into the Verizon building that we now own without a leaseholder in place. So I want to ask you both, do you have an expectation that some of these very important and very costly projects will be addressed by the council and the county executive?
I'll let you start with Cell 7.
Well, with respect to Cell 7, you may recall that this was originally supposed to go out for construction bidding in August, at the beginning of August. Then somewhat after that, the now Deputy Director of Public Works said that it would go out for construction bidding in October. And now here we are about to enter the second week of November, and as of this morning, it still was not on the county's bid site. For me, there's a credibility issue here. They've asserted that the construction documents are 100% complete, even though they bounced around on the level of completion of the documents.
60%, 90%, 70%.
So, but for at least 6 weeks now, they've been presented as being 100% complete. There's absolutely no reason that this could not go out for construction bidding with 100% documents. In fact, if they were only 80% complete documents, there's no reason that it could not have gone out for construction bidding, and then you make negotiated changes if there's some significant change in the drawings.
Now, when we were told that it would go out for bid in August or even in the early part of the fall, the expectation was that construction would start in early part of the winter, January, February, weather permitting, and that is a major factor in this area that time of year. That timeline put us into July for completion, and that was an aggressive construction timeline. And our county executive said that we were likely to run out of landfill space before that time, and that's just why she was going to close the landfill 2 or even 3 days a week at this point. So the fact that it's not out, there could be lots of reasons. We've attended every meeting. We haven't heard what those reasons are and what's the expectation now for the bidding or for the construction phase, right?
Well, that's correct. And, the Deputy Director of Public Works has asserted that, this will only be a 15-day construction bidding period. I don't buy that either. I have too much experience with construction bids to even begin to believe that. It will probably take 4 or perhaps as much as 6 weeks before they review all of the bids. So almost any time the administration is making a statement about these timelines, I've got to take it with an enormous grain of salt. I can see no plausible excuse for it not having gone out to bid at this juncture. The only thing I can assume is that there's some incompetence there. The Deputy Director of Public Works cannot do all of this by himself, but he has an engineering manager who I cannot say with certainty, but I suspect that she is involved with this.
And we have a highly paid consultant, and this has come up with the county executive. They're supposed to do follow-up about these contracts, but we're paying a consultant whose expertise lies in this. It's what's in their contract.
It is. So, it's kind of like the Keystone Cops at this point, near as I can tell. And I tell you, Joe, I even have to fundamentally question whether or not there was actually a crisis to start with. Was the administration years late in getting this process started? There's no question about that. But was there actually a crisis? Were we going to run out of space before Cell 7 was constructed? I don't know, and I have reason to believe that we actually had sufficient reserve space to accommodate the volume of trash. Now, we know that the volume of trash has been reduced
that is true.
Somewhat, which would make sense by prohibiting dumping of trash that's originating from out of county. That certainly helps. But their prior estimates were that it was only about 15%
20%.
of the overall volume.
Yeah.
So that is significant. But if there is a crisis, and the crisis, that was the county executive's words, that there is a crisis. But if there is one, don't you think that they would have, acted, in a more timely manner instead of diddling around as they apparently are?
So that was the crisis back in June and July. Jim?
Well, this is the thing that in my opinion, all this ties together. You take Cell 7 and the landfill. All of a sudden, after all the urgency, concern about getting Cell 7 taken care of, and they supposedly have reduced the amount of trash coming in by limiting out-of-county people from not being able to come in anymore. There doesn't seem to be any follow-up now on Cell 7.
Was that
it just kind of, it's like poof, magic is taken care of. Then you go down to dredging the Wacomico River.
Now, that was the crisis from April and May.
That was a crisis. They had to have $2.3 million. And the river, the dredge spoils had to be moved by October 1st. They had to have that money, or the Army Corps of Engineers would kick us out of rotation again for the 4th year now.
And they had to have it that night.
Yeah, well, that day, yes.
Warning.
Yeah, that day. So the council gave it to them. I've asked for the past 2 meetings for information on dredging because it's still not complete. The moving of the spoils is still not complete. Where they're going to move them to is not complete. But we have a private citizen at the council meeting 2 weeks ago come to the podium who had contacted the Army Corps of Engineers and had been told by the Army Corps that we were knocked out of rotation this year because we had nowhere to put the sludge that they dug up.
And that was Joe Scafino, who's a contributor of the show.
Right. So you've got a private citizen coming to tell the county council that the Army Corps is not going to dredge the river this year. Why is the executive or the county council not aware of that before a private citizen comes up and tells them?
Or they could be aware of it, they're just not
and not telling anybody. My whole problem with the council, the more I'm around it, is there is never any follow-up on anything. They talk about something, they make a decision, they give the go-ahead to start this, but there's no follow-up. Another of the questions that I've asked and not gotten an answer is if the dredge material had to be moved out of Sharps Point by October 1st, and they bid it out on a contract, was there a penalty phase in that contract if the contractor did not complete his job?
Yeah.
The job was not complete, but I don't know if there's a penalty contract or not,
Fair
because
question.
I've never gotten an answer. And then you go to your comment Tuesday night about the Verizon building and the health department.
And that was the crisis from a year before. We needed to
Yes.
have a place for the health department to move to.
Yes, and then in the budget in June, was it
It was $2.75 million. In
2.75?
addition to the $3.6 million that we paid for the
Exactly.
building, which is worth more than the building would be worth if we built it new.
Exactly, and we still don't have plans.
Well, and more importantly is for the last 18 months, we've owned the building, but we've had a leasee in there who has been,
Well, yes, the building's been empty, but we've been getting paid rent.
but we're
on
not
it.
now.
No, it's ours now. The maintenance of it is ours. Everything is ours, and it's just sitting there. Where are the plans? And they talk about the Hurdle building in downtown Salisbury, which is used by the health department, about the basement and the first floor of that building being almost unusable because of the deterioration in that building, and that was one of the reasons why they had to buy this Verizon building. Well,
and there's one other part. If you remember just a couple months ago, they moved $200,000 that was earmarked to renovate another health department building on Carroll Street.
the Fritz building.
The Fritz building, the flooring, they moved that money to upgrade the electrical systems at the nursing home.
Yes.
Based on the fact that they're going to move into the Verizon building. But unless they're doing it tomorrow, they're not. There are no plans now.
We don't even know if they've done a needs assessment yet for the Verizon building, and that is requisite to developing the interior improvement plans. We have no idea where they stand. Now, I completely agree with you that the council is not doing the necessary follow-up to demand answers to these kinds of questions for these various crises that we're experiencing. And most certainly, the county executive is not being forthcoming with offering any information.
No.
So on one hand, the executive branch is not communicating, they're hiding everything, and the council doesn't press for the info.
I think they ask a question, but then when they're given a weird answer, they just move on.
They do.
And I especially like Councilman David Ennis, I think he asked wonderful questions, and amongst other folks. But then there's answers that are given, and I think maybe because we've been covering these topics for the last couple of years, we know that if that answer was correct, something else had to have changed.
Yeah. Yes.
But then, he may not know to ask a follow-up, but not more information's offered. So we've covered 3 of the quote-unquote crises of the last year and a half. Another one is the Fruitland Primary School, the funding. Now, look, we've broken ground on that building, and at one point the state pulled out all of the funding, or said we had to forward fund it, and they would pay us back whenever they did. This led to our county executive stating that we may have to break the revenue cap. Now, this is the famous bait and switch from back in March and April of this year when we were going through the capital improvement plan. We had enough money to get the funding done for the first year from the state. But we're starting next month, the capital improvement planning for the next fiscal year. And there's not been a single update about where the state funds are and how we're going to afford this. You're talking over $20 million that this county may have to forward fund from a state that has a structural deficit.
There are no funding commitments at the back end for this. So how is it going to be paid for to complete construction of Fruitland Primary? That's anybody's guess. Certainly, the county doesn't have the money at this point, not without busting the revenue cap. And I firmly believe that our, supposedly conservative county executive has no problem with busting the revenue cap and having our taxes go up to pay for this. But the big question mark is, how much money is the state going to have? We are entering into a period of another crisis, a fiscal crisis statewide, that is the result of DOGE in part, that will reduce tax revenues into the state's coffers, and just the ongoing fiscal irresponsibility of the tax and spend liberals who control the Maryland state government.
There's one thing that I hope the county executive remembers about Fruitland Primary is we're a government, we're bonded. We can't just go through foreclosure. That may be an answer in your private life, but we have a school that is partially constructed that students and teachers need, and it's been funded. It's going to have to be funded. Mm-hmm. Breaking the revenue cap and almost gloating over a bait and switch over that affects families in this county. And it is a growth of government by just bloating it for that purpose. If we could make a plan, we have 6 months plus right now. If we were doing due diligence for a capital improvement for a private business, we most certainly wouldn't be waiting to the last minute to figure out how we're going to come up with $20 million. That even $20,000, we wouldn't do it.
No prudent lender would commit any funds if they don't know how the project is going to be complete. If you're looking at it as a private sector project, you don't want to have to foreclose a project that is partially complete. It's going to be exposed to the weather. Mm-hmm. If there's a delay in securing the necessary funding to complete. This is part of the problem when you have amateurs who are controlling things. And let's face it, our county executive was a teacher. I have great respect for teachers. I have great respect for that profession. But she does not have the business, construction, finance, or management qualifications to be able to navigate us through these multiple crises. And in fact, I would say that many of these crises are of the county executive's own making. That's abundantly clear to me.
Well, you've got, and this is the problem when you get into large sums of money. When you've got a county with a budget of, what is it, $216, $220 million, when they sit in a council meeting and they talk about $100,000 or $200,000, well, that's $1 out of your pocket is all that is when you're dealing with these kind of numbers. But you need to sit down and look. As Joe just mentioned, we've got Fruitland Primary, which is going to have to be funded somewhere along the line. You've got Cell 7, which needs to be funded, but that's the last cell. So then they've got to move across the road and go into develop plans to create and implement that landfill.
It's going to be very expensive.
Yeah.
You've got the Board of Education, who very quickly is going to be asking for more than $6 million for metal detectors and security in our schools. And in my opinion, that should be the first thing that gets funded in this county. Whatever they ask for to take care of the kids in school, they should be given. But past the initial $6.5 million, they're saying that this program is going to cost another $1.5 or $2 million per year
to staff it,
to staff it and keep it running. So you've got to look at that. You've got the EMS problem and fire problem in this county with the older volunteers are leaving because of age. Yes, you have some young people coming in, but you have an older population in this county that requires more EMS care. And we spent the money to do the study.
Yeah.
And you've got all kinds of estimates out there on what it's going to cost for the county to take over this problem. You've got the water and sewer problem coming. You've got so many things in the pipeline that just have so many zeros behind what it's going to cost to do it that a plan needs to be made. And when you're going to set next, I believe it's Tuesday or Wednesday, the 12th, we're going to have a CIP meeting at the Civic Center to hear what the concerns the citizens have and projects that they want to have funded. But there is not going to be any information supplied to the public about what the county feels like.
There is
and
no
this
pro
is
forma CIP that you would use as a baseline to open this discussion.
Right.
It's just going to be, hello, I want this. I want this. But that doesn't make any sense. This is not a sound management approach to a problem. It's not just one problem. This is multiple problems that we're experiencing as just about the poorest county in the state. And I can only say this, that voters need to be very judicious in how they cast their votes. They need to look at the qualifications of every candidate, whether it's for executive, whether it's for the county council. Do these people have the kind of management and business background to be able to navigate us through these choppy waters? Right now, from what I see, certainly on the executive's level, that level of experience and knowledge and education is simply not there, and it's questionable among several members of the council as well. We must make better choices.
Well, thank you, Michael. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for talking about this. And Jim and Mike, I hope you guys stay on top of each one of these individual crises that have come up. So when we come back, we're going to bring back in Trish Melvin, and we're going to talk about her observations from the county council meeting. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. Trish Melvin's back with us in the studio. Thank you. Mr. Jim Atkins, thanks for sticking around.
still here.
So it was interesting to get to listen to Mike Goldberg. He has done a lot of research about the dredging and the spoils coming out of Conley Mill, or potentially going into Conley Mill, and also the Cell 7 out at the landfill. Trish, you've been to most of the last several county council meetings, particularly about the arrangement with ICE. Do you think we've gotten off topic by going down this rabbit hole with ICE and going down the rabbit hole with the liquor bills? Have we neglected the most important aspects?
Quite a bit, I'm afraid. Yeah, it's concerning to hear the open-ended arrangements that were left, like particularly with the landfill issues and the dredging spoils. These seem to be issues that are just left hanging without a clear resolution or plan, at least from what I perceive.
I mean, we've spent, Jim, a lot of time on this show discussing ICE, discussing the liquor bills that continue to come back up.
It happens every year.
Lots of now that ICE has been put on the back burner, at least for now, the next 6 or 8 months, and the liquor bills are probably going to continue to resurface. Do you think people in the county, they're going to feel these other topics that are being left behind in their pocketbooks first, or do you think that it's just not going to hit them until their taxes get raised?
I don't think it's going to hit them until they get ready to talk about the budget again next spring. I mean, there is not going to be if the past 3 years that I've attended the CIP meetings, if the attendance is as it has been the last 3 years, I think the high point was maybe 7 people showed up to ask for something in their community. To me, it should be an information program to give the community, but the executive's not going to give any information out.
You're going to be supposedly there just taking notes and writing down ideas.
Taking notes, and the director of finance is going to be doing the presentation. The executive's going to be taking notes, and as is probably most of the occurrences, she won't be taking any questions because she won't have anybody there to give her an answer that she can give to the public. So,
one of the things we've seen in the director of finance's presentations there is this idea of what the debt load is allowed to be. That is hard to understand. I mean, as a business owner myself, there's only so much debt I'm willing to take on compared to revenues I have coming in.
Right.
You have to be able to recession-proof yourself. We have those guardrails, too, for the county. but you're looking at several unfunded projects that, it could be something on the smaller side, like the Verizon building at only $2.75 million, but it could be something much larger like Fruitland Primary at $20 million. It's something in between, like moving dredging spoils for $11 or $12 million, right?
Well, you have all these things that all of a sudden just seem to pop up. And I don't want anybody to take this wrong, because anybody who knows me personally knows that I have a limited law enforcement background. But I am 120% in favor of police protection, whatever they need, you give them. But when you have the sheriff's office coming to the council in October asking for over $1 million for body cameras, that didn't just pop up all of a sudden. That's been in the works. We've had body cameras.
And it's on a contract.
Yes, and if you know it's coming up, why wasn't that in the budget last year?
Yeah.
Why wasn't that put in there? And you get all these things, and we've talked about it numerous times. How long is it going to take after the budget is struck before somebody comes in there and says, well, I need $1 million for this, or I need $1 million for that? Well, you should have known it 2 weeks ago.
The winner there was Director of Finance Pam Olin needing to come back to ask for raises for the part-time employees.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, and it was 3 weeks.
Yeah.
3 weeks. It was. I gave it a month. I was wrong. Trish, you spent a lot of time researching the ICE agreement. You've been there. You've seen the public comments that have lasted for 2 hours plus, just about every meeting for the last 3 months now. You've seen how much time and effort not only the council's put in, asking, trying to get information, but the public has put in trying to make their voices heard. Then you see these major expenditures coming on board. Do you think we're going to get the same buy-in on people being part of this process?
That's again very concerning. And as you mentioned, we have been talking about ICE for months now, and I think that 3 months ago, the proper homework should have been done.
Yeah.
In the meeting Tuesday night, our administration's attorney, Mr. Illuminati, kept referring to the new guidance from the Maryland Attorney General. Yes, there is new guidance that was dated October 15th, but it was merely a reiteration of existing Maryland law.
Which already could have been there and explained.
Exactly. He referenced the Maryland Criminal Procedure Article 5-104, which was passed in 2021.
Okay.
And became effective in 2022. And that article prohibits law enforcement from doing immigration work. And that's why in the state of Maryland, there are no counties that have the task force officer model, because it's always, since 2022, it's been not allowed. It's been prohibited in the language. So this prohibition of the sheriff being involved in the 287G activities is nothing new.
So is this just a big distraction?
I can't say whether it was an inability to weed. I mean, the language is dense, certainly. But a lawyer, that's what they do, right? They read through that.
Especially at over $300 an hour. That's what they do.
And I don't really think it was a distraction away from other things. A lot of things that the executive does in this county, I feel, are distractions that get you to look at this ball while this ball is rolling downhill. I don't think this was a distraction. This was something that she wanted. It was something that the sheriff wanted. She got out ahead of her skis in broadcasting all this out to the county, got the citizens all in an uproar, because she didn't give them accurate information. But they didn't explain this to the community, and they got the community upset, and they got what the executive and the sheriff got what they deserved. The community came after them.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, when we're looking at these tax dollars going out, I hope any of the elected officials who didn't ask good questions or have a good plan get exactly what they deserve as well. Thank you both for your insight. I appreciate it, and I hope that you will come back in and talk about this more as more information comes out. Thanks for watching this episode of Open Agenda. We'll be back later this week with another new episode.
I know what I'm doing, man.